Thank you, committee, for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Bernal, and I'm the National Director for Stop Predatory Gambling, which is a national advocacy group based in Washington, D.C. We're involved in all 50 states. We pull from citizens of all political stripes and all walks of life, and who make up our national network. I personally am from Massachusetts. I'm from Lawrence, Massachusetts, which is the poorest city in the state. So I'm very familiar with the Massachusetts Gambling Commission. It's a community where I live, where just like here in Georgia, they sell $50 scratch tickets on every street corner in the poorest community in the state. And I also want to clarify where we get our funding from, because the problem gambling councils in our country, particularly the National Council on Problem Gambling, unfortunately, at this point, receives the bulk of their funding from the gambling industry. And we're hoping in the years ahead that's going to change. But so when you hear Problem Gambling Council speak, their funding is almost directly derived from the gambling industry. So I have 5 quick facts I'm going to share with you all today. But before I do so, I want to say this is the homepage of our website for Stop Predatory Gambling in the first slide. This is the homepage for our campaign, the Campaign for Gambling-Free Kids. When this is over, I encourage all of you to check out our websites to learn more. So the first fact I'm going to talk about today, and this is pretty simple. I mean, this is the science talking, and we don't really talk about the science here yet. The science has shown us that online gambling is a dangerous and addictive product. And this isn't me saying this. This is the American Psychiatric Association, and the DSM-5, which is known as a mental health Bible. Health insurers use it, doctors' offices use it. They identify gambling addiction as an addiction, like they identify cocaine, opioids, and heroin. So this is far different than, this is not some innocuous, casual gambling that occurs between two people as friends. This is a highly addictive product. And you can just read the language there directly from the DSM at the bottom of that slide, which I won't read to. You can read that on your own. So we talk about a lot about responsible gambling today. You hear state officials from my own state of Massachusetts and across the country talk about quote unquote responsible gambling. Well, that's an industry term. Okay, responsible gambling. If it really was effective, okay, let's look at the non-alcoholic industry, all the companies that sell non-alcoholic drinks, got whiskey, vodka, wine, and beer, and so on. You would think if so-called responsible gambling was real and effective, it was actually genuinely important to helping people, you would think there'd be a market for a gambling operator to fill that space. But there's 0 gambling operators in this country and in the world that call themselves we're the responsible gambling operators. And there's a reason for that. Okay, there's a reason for that. The business model, as we've heard earlier, and you'll hear over again, the business model is based on the addictive gambler. They don't have a business model without it. Okay, and here are the facts on that. Very quickly, there's at least 9 independent studies. This is right from the Atlantic, which is one of the most respected national opinion leader magazines. A big story they did on casinos a few years ago. At least 9 independent studies, they're not funded by the gambling industry, shows that the addicted gambler makes up, up to 60% of their profits. And then the question I'd love to ask, and I urge the committee, you have Mark Bernal in from the Massachusetts Gambling Commission, who's the responsible gambling point person. Let's ask the question: how much money? You have all these gambling lobbyists in the room today. How much money does the gambling industry make from citizens who practice so-called responsible gambling codes of conduct? It's almost negligible. That's the Natasha Shull, who's the #1 researcher in the country on gambling technology and so on. She's now at NYU, wrote the landmark book, Addiction by Design. Said that she had a study in that book where 75% of the players walking in the casino were so-called casual players. They made up 4% of gambling profits. So as well as intended as you are to put 15% into problem gambling, they don't have a business model. The business model is based on the out-of-control player. 90% of citizens who are addicted to gambling, they never even come forward for help. So you're just touching the tip of the iceberg. So the fact number 2 on this, and this is the demographic that's going to pay the biggest price here in Georgia. Kids used to grow up following sports. Myself, when I was growing up, Dale Murphy was a huge superstar in baseball. One of my favorite. That's an actual baseball card from Dale Murphy, 1979. Kids used to collect baseball cards. Now in our country today, in playgrounds, in states where they've legalized this, playgrounds, in locker rooms, They're talking about their parlay bets. Who's going to, their in-play wagering, all this type of stuff that's happening in our schools. Call any middle school principal in a state that's legalized this and ask them, are you seeing a gambling problem amongst middle schoolers? This is real. Okay, this is real. Kids, it's being normalized for kids. It's the advertising that's driving it. Okay, there's some good facts in there about how gambling advertising normalizes gambling for kids. Today you're not a sports fan anymore unless you have money on the game. I was a high school men's basketball coach, a college men's basketball coach. The idea you play sports for the drama and the competition. Now it's about the gambling. That's new in America. Okay, and we talk about the lobbyists will stand up and say, we're going to protect the kids. We'll protect the kids from this product. If you legalize online sports gambling, we're going to protect them. Let's look at how the state government here in Georgia protects kids currently from the lottery. Okay, this is from the lottery website. Is last I sit in my hotel room. That's 5 screenshots I took. Look, 4 of them of different games. Those are cartoon-like figures. They're free-to-play games. They have this whole product called DigiGames, so you can go on and play online. That's how we're regulating, quotes, I put that in quotes, regulating gambling today in Georgia to protect kids. Cats and dogs, little ladybugs. And on that screen to the right, if you go to the website at the lottery and put your mouse over it, you get a buy now or try. It's free to play. There's no age restriction. You can have a 10-year-old kid go on that lottery website and play these games. They look like cartoon games. Who do you think the lottery is targeting with those games? Let's be honest. Who are they going after? They're normalizing gambling for the kids of Georgia. So the idea that somehow you're going to protect kids from online sports gambling if you're bringing in, with all due respect, we're not seeing it now with the Georgia lottery. So the fact number 3, commercialized gambling exploits the little guy. Okay, and there's an amazing amount of facts up there, and I released this. This is a handout we sent to all of you as well prior to the hearing. But just real briefly, let's look how much money people are already losing in Georgia to the Georgia lottery without even bringing in new forms of gambling. In the last year, $2.2 billion of personal wealth was lost by the people of Georgia. Okay, who are disproportionately low-income people playing the lottery. $2.2 billion of wealth lost. That's $4,200 every minute. So if I speak for 10 minutes today, okay, that's 40 grand that's going to be lost by the people of Georgia. Okay, 40 grand. In the last 20 years, since FY 2000, the people of Georgia have lost $36 billion of personal wealth to commercialized gambling. Unbelievable. $36 billion. So and the state does nothing. If you don't add any new forms of gambling here in the state, over the next 5 years, the state citizens are going to lose $11 billion of wealth to gambling. Okay. How much is enough? How much is enough for Georgia state officials do they want their citizens to lose? What's that magic number? Is $36 billion not enough? And here's one of my favorite facts to show. Because when Dracula is in charge of the blood bank, you got a $50 scratch ticket selling in states with people who make a minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. You have to work a full day labor at a minimum wage job before you can lose it in 5 seconds on a $50 scratch ticket. So who's regulating that to protect the public? Was that what you haven't intended? $50 scratch tickets in low-income communities across the state? Fact number 4, the big con. Why commercialized gambling is different than every other business. Okay. There's this assumption that gambling is just like going to Starbucks or going to the movies or anything else. What makes commercialized gambling different than every other business, and the reason why your forefathers in this state had a constitutional amendment process to deal with gambling is because it's inherently a form of financial fraud. It's a big con. Okay. If you go and order a slice of pizza, you go to order a beer, a glass of wine, you go to a Falcons game, that's what you receive in return. Commercialized gambling is a financial exchange that is mathematically stacked against you. It gives you the lure that you might win money. Okay, but it's the more you participate in it at higher and higher price points, you're going to end up losing all your cash. Okay, it's a con. It's just like price gouging and false advertising, both of which are illegal in Georgia, as is. You and I can't run our own lottery. We can't run our own online game operator and that stuff because it's illegal, because it's a form of financial fraud. That's why it's illegal in most states in our country unless you partner with the state. Here's the con in action. Here's just, I think it's the best graphic I've ever seen. This is from Natasha Schul's book, Addiction by Design. That's for how a slot machine works, but that model is true for all forms of gambling. It's true for online sports gambling. The more time you spend on the device, the more times you spend it, the more buttons you press, the longer more frequently you play it, you end up guaranteed mathematically to lose all your money. Okay, it's a con. Other examples of the big con. Okay, the big con that represents predatory gambling. You make a bet with a friend, and that's one thing. When you're betting against a sports book, you're going to get beat almost all the time. And this is a quote from an prominent ESPN reporter, where he was interviewed in an Ohio newspaper, and this is his exact quote. There was a study of the accounts of a major bookmaker. Out of 500,000 accounts, only 50 of the accounts, 50 individuals, were found to be profitable. I mean, that's what we're talking about. It's a con. It's a fraud. If you are one of the if you're one of the very rare people though who's actually good at this, you got the algorithms, you know how to track the weather, all the injury reports, and you're eking out, you're beating these guys little by little. The bookmakers, they shut you out. ESPN's reported this. The Washington Post reported they'll close your account or restrict your ability to bet. So even if you win, they shut you down. So a lot of the arguments here are going to prevent illegal gambling. They're doing it anyways. It was touched on. Again, these numbers aren't coming from the Georgia Bureau of Investigations or the FBI. This was a specific PR campaign by the American Gambling Association, as the New York Times revealed in its a big study, investigative series on sports gambling in November, that this was a coordinated, orchestrated PR campaign that they've used state by state to create quote unquote momentum for sports gambling, because there's no other rationale for it.
Number 5, our new committee's walking in the door.
What's that?
Hit number 5 because the new committee is walking in the door.
Got it. All right. And also, the last thing on that, the distinguished members of a Hall of Fame, if you want to go to our homepage of our website, one thing that's consistent across this is gambling operators, governors, legislators, and so on who push gambling. Most of them themselves don't gamble. The last thing I'll say on this is fact number 5 is you pay even if you don't play. For all those folks who think you're benefiting from this, in the long term, this is the best report in the country around government gambling revenues. That's, it shows it's a loser as a revenue source. That's the reality of it. So in closing, the last thing I'd say is those are all the facts summarized. At the end of the day, we've known these facts for 20 years. If we talk about need more research, we've known the facts about this for 20 years, and there's nothing really new here. What's driven this process in Georgia and across our country is 2 things. It's driven by greed and a lust for power. That's why commercialized gambling is in the space here. There's no grassroots movement for this. That's why there's 80 gambling lobbyists registered in the state of Georgia. So they spend millions of dollars for this business. So I appreciate the opportunity to testify today, and I'll stick around if there's any questions. Thanks for your work.